How's it going, folks? My name is Sammy and welcome back to Sammy's Gaming Retreat. In today's episode, I wanted to share with you something cool I finally got in the mail. I was waiting for it for a couple weeks. It finally came in. Phantasy Star OG version on the Sega Master System. Pretty well the whole reason I bought a Master System. It finally came through the mail. It's in pretty good shape, actually. The manual looks well loved. I'll show you now. It's got all the pages and everything, nothing's ripped, but yeah, it looks like it was well loved, which I think I already discussed on the channel. I really like when old games have, not when they're in bad shape, but when they're in sort of a, I've been played and I've been loved condition. The game itself looks incredible. It still has a good save battery, so I can still use it to save and play. I don't have to get a new battery for it just yet, but the game itself in excellent shape. I'm so excited to have this in my collection. The whole reason I got a Master System was so I can play Phantasy Star OG version. I have it on other platforms because it's come out since, but there's nothing quite like plugging it into the original system and just playing, especially on the Master System. I even got a CRT television so I can plug the Master System into that. I'm probably showing footage of it right now. And when I plugged in Phantasy Star to the Master System and I turned it on and that intro music plays for the first time, I got goosebumps. It was such a fun throwback and such a wave of nostalgia flew over me just playing so much as a kid. Phantasy Star was initially released by Sega in 1988. So 2 years before I was born. I'm part of the, what you would call the post-Phantasy Star baby community. There's a whole support group for us. This was, 1988. That's pretty groundbreaking at the time. And this game is right up there with Earthbound in my favorite games of all time. This is probably like a very close second. I don't think anything's really ever going to beat Earthbound just based on pure nostalgia. I love that game so much. But Phantasy Star, very close. I must have played through this game 20 plus times. I can't even count anymore, beginning to end. Such a fun game. And I remember when I was a kid and I played, I could never beat the last part because I'm not going to give away any spoilers. I know it's like a 30-year-old game, but there's a part at the end where you have to find somebody who's missing, and it's the last thing you do in the game, and I couldn't do it when I was a kid. I couldn't find them. And then finally, a few years ago, maybe like 5-6 years ago, I did it, and it was so satisfying to finally do it. I most recently replayed this over the pandemic when everybody was staying at home looking for something to do, trying to fill some time. I replayed it on my Nintendo Switch, which is a great version of it, by the way, if you haven't tried it or if you're looking to try it. It's relatively inexpensive, and it's really faithful port. And it's actually made the game easier, so I'll discuss that in a little bit here. But yeah, I wanted to talk about this game and why I love it so much. I was trying to think about it over the last week or so, why this game speaks to me in the way it does. And I think it's because when I was a young boy and I played it for the first time, I don't think it was the graphics, because I was born in 1990, so I was playing Super Nintendo and those types of games at that time. And N64 even. So I don't think it was the graphics that really spoke to me. I think it was the gameplay itself, and especially the first-person dungeons. When you get into that first dungeon, and the game's really good because in that initial town, there's a dungeon. It looks like a cave immediately on your first screen, and it's so inviting. So you go in there and immediately you experience this dungeon for the first time, and it's first person. And I had not experienced anything like that. As well as the story and the theme of it, sort of like, it's very sci-fi mixed with fantasy. So I was a big Star Wars fan when I was a young boy, and I guess I still am, but also when I was a young boy. Not really anything was similar to that in such a colorful and vibrant world. And even the enemies, the way they would attack you, they'd animate on the screen, and it was just cool. It felt like you were really there, because even the battles were first person to a degree, and you'd see your attacks on the characters. So there's a character named Odin who you can equip with guns, and you'd see the gunshots on the screen, and yeah, like, I never experienced that, a character that can use guns, and then his guns can attack every enemy that's against you. So if there's 4 enemies in the enemy party, the gun would shoot each of them for a set amount of HP. So like just cool strategies like that where, you know, I hadn't experienced anything like that. That mixed with the dungeons, like, you know, they started off simple, so you're like, okay, I got this, but you know, there comes a point you really need graph paper or to map out the dungeons because they get so complicated. Especially in the first person, it's, you know, it's kind of that effect where you're inside with no windows. So you kind of, after a set period of time, you sort of lose coordination a bit. Where am I in relation to where I started? It gets harder and harder, and the game does a good job of making the dungeons more and more complicated as you go through. So you do need some graph paper, and I love that. I think that that's quite fun, and it challenges you in a way that's more... it's more of an experience rather than just I'm playing a game. It's not that long. I think when I most recently replayed it, it was something like 15 or 16 hours. It might have been 20, but it was definitely like 20 or less because, well, one, I kind of knew where to go, but also the Switch version is really accessible and does make the game a lot easier. So if it's your first time playing, I really do recommend it. And it's fairly inexpensive. I'm just so happy to have this on Sega Master System. It's such a throwback, and this box art is just waves of nostalgia. All the old box art used to be cool, like not necessarily what was in the game, but you know, kind of sort of tied to it. It's really funny. Like here on the box, Odin is like body slamming this skeleton. That's not a move he knows in the game. Old box art is the sickest. Even old like VHS tapes, some of the art on them is really good. Anyway, yeah, Phantasy Star, really excited. I've got such great memories of this game. You know, me playing and my family watching, and you get early in the game you get $50 from the cave, and that's like the only money you have to start. And then the first shop has a shield for $30. So like immediately you have to make a decision. Do I blow all my hard-earned cash or save it? And you know, when I was a kid, I remember I'd always just blow my cash on the shield because I'd be like, ooh, upgrades immediately. So those are good times. Yeah, there's so much to love about this game. The party members, there's 4 distinct party members. One of them is a cat right there. Not a cougar or a tiger or a cheetah or a jaguar, a straight up house cat. I have such fond memories of this game. It really does reward exploration and grinding. It's very old school in that way. Sometimes you just gotta defeat enemies for money or for experience. But well worth it. It really rewards your time. Even though it's not a long game, it's everything, all your time feels well spent because you see the growth and you see how you can damage enemies easier and you know, classic RPG stuff, but very, very well done. Even the music on this game, and I will say I have a playlist on my phone of Phantasy Star music. I absolutely love just listening to it, especially that opening theme when I can't tell you, like just turning on the Master System and then the Sega logo, of course, but then the Phantasy Star splash screen and the music, I still get kind of excited when I hear it and I turn the TV on. So yeah, definitely, you should give the soundtrack a listen to for sure. But if you want to play Phantasy Star and you want to own a copy, there's a few ways you can do that. There are, of course, the Sega Master System. This is by far the most expensive way. I mean, big shocker. The oldest one's the most expensive, of course. I would actually only recommend getting this copy if you absolutely love the game, if you really want the original, if you have the other 3 on Genesis or Mega Drive and you want this one to complete the set, all those sorts of things. I think it's worth owning if you love the series because it's really expensive to buy sort of on a whim if you haven't played. That being said, there are some really affordable ways to play. So if you have a PS3 or Xbox 360, Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection is really inexpensive and you can play it on there by unlocking it. And that actually has all 4 Phantasy Star games on it. And because it's on PS3 or Xbox 360, you can play in HD. So that's an excellent way to play the game. Another way, and my recommendation, my preferred way, I think, to play is on the Switch. There, in the eShop, you can buy the Sega Ages, and that's actually how I got all the footage for this video. But it's also got some great accessible features for folks that are just coming in because These old games are hard. They don't tell you what to do. You just kind of gotta figure it out as you go. At the time, that's the way games worked, and you know, a lot of us people that have been playing games for a long time, we like that. However, not everyone has the time or the will to just sort of work through that, and that's okay. Everybody games sort of differently, so if you want a more accessible version of Phantasy Star, and the original version, you actually have the choice. The Sega Ages version on the Nintendo Switch eShop is really inexpensive, and it's got some excellent features like having your party up on the screen at all times so you can see their status, how much money you have, and if you are in a dungeon, it will actually map out the grid for you in real time so you could see where you've been and what's going on, so you don't have to refer to a map because it's on the screen, nor do you have to use a grid like graph paper because again it's on the screen. That's my recommendation if you don't want to shell out the big bucks for this one. You know, if you had it growing up, we didn't have an NES growing up. We had a Master System, so this is really it speaks to me a little more than, you know, somebody who had an NES. Maybe they've got Super Mario or Final Fantasy or Dragon Warrior or any of those, which are great games. But it's different when you had something as a kid and then you reacquire it somehow. It feels like an accomplishment. It's kind of cool. So yeah, Phantasy Star, I highly recommend this game. Check out the soundtrack for sure. Check out some gameplay footage if you're unsure, but definitely give it a shot. I highly recommend it. It still holds up. I think if you can get past the graphics, of course, I really think it still holds up. So yeah, that's going to be it for this week's video. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed, and if you've played Phantasy Star, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think the first one is still my favorite, although I might be in the minority on that one. I think probably people like the second and fourth one better, but yeah, this is the one I played growing up, so probably there's some nostalgia goggles going on. In any case, really hope you enjoyed the video, folks, and I will see you in the next episode.